This is a Sports Radio Live podcast covering your world of sports. Bryan Houston's Sports Radio Live. It's weekdays at 3 on 99.3 Talk FM, the talk of East Texas.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
Doing very well. Thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You are certainly welcome, Bryan. This is Bryan?
Yes, sir. Sure
hey,
is.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. As soon as he gives me the high sign, we'll start recording here.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com, the national columnist for CBSSports.com. It's Gregg Doyel. How you doing, Greg?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing very well. Happy National Donut Day to you.
Is that what it is?
Yes, I know. It's up to me to pass these nuggets along. So if you didn't know before, you need to get down to the Continental Breakfast now, okay?
Yeah, the sports media, Bryan, we're part of it. We should all know about free donuts, or at least donuts. Yeah.
Absolutely. And before we get to talking NBA here, I have to ask you, because I've been reading some of the stuff, just catching up here. What bothers you more as a columnist, knowing that the entire Florida State fan base hates you, or that the one person who voted for Craig James probably took you off the Christmas card list?
Yeah, I can believe one of those things happened. I can believe the fan base would not like me. That's fine. But I cannot believe someone voted for Craig James that wasn't in his immediate family.
You know what? I'm telling you, if he would have had a picture taken of him and and the pirate, hugging and maybe beating his kid at the same time on a campaign poster, he would have had a chance.
Yeah, he's gone out of his way with his earlier stuff to make himself dislikable in a state that ought to love him. I mean, they ought to love Craig James in Texas.
They used to.
Guy.
They used to.
Right. He just took on the wrong pirate and did it in a bad way. You can, like, with integrity, you can go after somebody. You can go after anybody with integrity, and as long as people think, well, yeah, we really like Mike Leach, but we understand your point, Craig James. We understand it. No one understands it. No one looks at that battle and says, of the two of them, I sure wish I was Craig James. Nobody wants to be that guy, and nobody wants to vote for him either.
Well, if he would have been like Tiger Woods and had like 900 affairs, he'd have had a better chance than he would have had having a spoiled kid.
Well, yeah, because it's one thing to mess up your own life and to meet your own needs the way Tiger did it, but to use your power to bully somebody else and to try and turn your silver spoon kid into something more than he is, and to get a coach fired if you can. It's not just that he's not just messing up his own life. He's now messing up people around him. Of course, Tiger messed up. You could say he messed up his wife's life too. It's not like I'm trying to say Tiger's a great guy, but yeah, there's no people have tried to defend Tiger. There have been people defending him, like, yeah, well, what he does in his own marriage is between him and his wife. There's a defense for Tiger, whether you like it or not. There's no defense for James.
No, and the other thing to note is it's not a great way to kick off a senatorial campaign either.
No, but America loves a comeback, and no one's been knocked down farther than Craig James, so maybe he makes his big comeback. Maybe he's our president in 12 years.
If John Edwards gets a mistrial, Craig James has a shot. That's all I can say. I'm just saying that, okay? All right, let's talk NBA here. Yeah. You were at the ball game last night at Oklahoma City?
I was there.
What was it like watching this? First of all, Pop says he wants some nasty. I don't think this is what he had in mind last night.
No, yeah, getting run out of the gym was nasty, but that's not what he wanted. The Thunder were nasty. They were Kendrick Perkins. Of course, he's always nasty, I guess, but he was nasty. He was bullying Tim Duncan around, and James Harden was attacking the rim and staring at people, and like throwing his shoulders around when the refs weren't watching. And the Thunder had a chip on the shoulder, and they were angry. And they played that way, and the Spurs, they just mailed it in. If they play like that the rest of the series, they're not going to win a game because they mailed it in. It's like a boxer when you're up 5 or 6 rounds and you're tired and you take off round 7. You just kind of take it off and let the other guy win, but you come back to rounds 8 through 10. They were like a boxer that took a round off, and maybe that's all they were doing, but they just mailed it in.
Was that an aberration last night, or is this more like what we may see the rest of the series now?
You have to think it was an aberration. The Spurs had won 20 in a row and had beaten people pretty handily and had been really good in this series too. Yet it's hard to imagine that all of a sudden they're going to become the anti-Spurs like they were last night, and that'll stick. But the Thunder did make one change that I presume they're going to stick with, and it'll be telling to see how the Spurs handle it, even if they can handle it, and that was to put Cephalosha on Parker. And I'm sure the Thunder made a lot more changes than that, but that was the one that really impacted the game, and Parker got taken out of the game. And maybe because he was taken out of the game, that's why everybody else just kind of mailed it in. I don't know, but we'll see Cephalosha again on Parker. And if he takes Parker out of the game in Game 4 like he did in Game 3, then we're going to see the same result, and then all of a sudden, the series is on.
Well, it looks like, too, that they were determined that they were not going to give Tony Parker open shots anymore, that they were going to go ahead and let Duncan and these guys, get whatever they could, but they were not going to let Tony Parker beat them last night.
Yeah, they attacked him with the pick and roll that, used to be he would roll off a guy and they would, I'm not a basketball terminology thing, but I guess the Thunder centers would go underneath the screens, or the guard would go underneath the screens, or whatever it was. That he would come off a screen and be open and shoot a 16-footer, and a lot of teams let him do that because he's not always going to make them. Well, he made all of them in Game 2, 16 of 21, and the ones he missed were probably layups. I mean, he made all of his jumpers, and so they sent waves of players at Parker, like, you're not going to do that to us again. And Duncan had the ball in his hands a lot, had a lot of shots, and they were tough shots because he's close to the rim, but he wasn't finishing any of them. Ginobili was not on either, and that's the big three. If you're big three, if they're not on, then you're in big trouble, and they had nobody to pick up the slack. They had nobody, like Cephalosha was hitting big shots on the other end for the Thunder. The Spurs really had nobody. Well, if you guys are going to be off Gary Neal or Matt Bonner or Kawhi Leonard, one of us, we're going to score 28. No, nobody picked it up.
And the other thing that was really uncharacteristic of a team that plays so fundamentally sound as the Spurs do is, 21 turnovers last night?
Yeah, at least. It seemed like more than that, maybe because they were all so stupid. It was, they were Parker throwing the ball behind his back to nobody, and another time Parker drove the baseline and got near the rim and tried a bounce pass up the lane through traffic.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the kind, like you tell a quarterback to, if you throw the ball late, if you're in the pocket and you're waiting, if you're going to finally get rid of the ball, don't get rid of the ball right down the middle of the field, because that's where everybody is. But that's what Parker did, and there's a great little internet image of Popovich on the sideline at that moment, putting his face in his hand and collapsing in the lap of an assistant next to him. I mean, it looked like he had passed out. It looked like he fainted because of what he was seeing was so frustrating to him. And that one play was the dumbest by far, but it still kind of summed up how the Spurs played. They were just not smart all game, and it was so decidedly uncharacteristic.
And I would hate to be in the practice session today behind closed doors with Popovich.
Oh, he's going to be, now we're going to see some math.
Yeah.
I mean,
he'll scare them.
Yeah, he was not happy after the game, and he will not be. He doesn't seem to be very happy after wins, and he hasn't had a loss in 50 days, and so this one's been building up, I guess, and so he's going to be really, really unhappy. But they got outplayed, and it's one thing you say, well, you tip your cap to the other guy, they outplayed us, and it's going to happen. But they got outplayed in the day that they weren't even competing. So Popovich can't even comfort himself. Not that he strikes me as a guy that wants to comfort himself a whole lot, but he can't comfort himself with, the Thunder were just on and it was just their night. It might have been their night, but the Spurs just rolled over and played dead, and that can't feel good for Popovich.
And one of the other things about the Oklahoma City team, just when you think that at least I've come to the determination over some games that I thought, there's no way this team's ever going to win with Russell Westbrook playing point guard. Then he goes out last night, he has 9 assists, he only scores, I think 11 points or something like that. I mean, he played like a true point guard last night, and they win by 20. You would think he'd get it and continue to play like this. Yeah,
I'll be curious to see what happens with him, because he did take a decent number of shots last night, but not what he normally does. And he scored, I'm pretty sure he scored 10 even less than you thought. Yeah, he barely got double figures, but he scored 10. They won by 20. He was third on the team in shots, as it should be, because he's their third best shooter. Now, he scores a lot, but he's an Iverson kind of scorer. He's a volume scorer. You shoot a lot, you score a lot, but their most efficient scorers are Durant and Harden. So if they can give those guys the most shots, their offense is the best. Westbrook needs to realize that as the guy controlling the offense, that it's not in our best interest if I take most shots, because I don't make them as often as the other two guys do. And for one night, it worked out that way, and it looked like it was intentional. I mean, there were several times where he had shots, the kind of shots that he takes, and normally will miss, and he was passing them up because he saw open teammates elsewhere. And I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that wasn't a fluke, because it happened all game long. Like, he made a mental tweak and it certainly worked out for him and his team.
Well, they watched the Spurs make the extra pass the entire ball game in Game 2, and it looked like they took a complete page out of their playbook, and it certainly worked. So after Game 2, we thought, man, this is a possible sweep for San Antonio. Now, after Game 3, what do you think about the way the rest of this series goes?
I really need to see what happens with Parker and Cephalosha, and also Westbrook. Both those point guards set the tone, obviously, for their teams, and they were both so completely out of character in Game 3. Parker got taken out of his game by Cephalosha, and Westbrook was not the kind of the ball hoggy scoring first guard that he's always been. It's hard to imagine both those things will continue. They made such dramatic changes. Parker for the worst, Westbrook for the better. The dramatic changes. It's kind of hard to say, yeah, just overnight both these guys are going to be different players. They were that night. They were in Game 3, there's no doubt about it. But to think that Parker will be that ineffective in Games 4 through 7, if it goes that far, and to think that Westbrook will be that team first in Games 4 through 7, when that's not really been either guy's MO for years. It's like a saying that in baseball they have, when a guy's hitting 230 in June, but he's a career 300 hitter, they say, look, the back of his baseball card says he hits 300. By the end of the year, he's going to be hitting 300. And usually that's true. Well, the back of the baseball card or basketball card for these guys says that Westbrook will hog the ball, and to the detriment of the Thunder against really good teams, and Parker will be effective to the detriment of the teams they're playing. And so I want to say that the Spurs will, last night was a blip, and the Spurs, they're not going to sweep. Obviously, they probably won't even win in 5, but they'll still win in 6 or 7.
All right, and the other series, after Rondo's heroic performance and the Celtics still come up empty, is there any gas left in the tank for them against the Heat?
It's hard to imagine because Pierce looked really old, Garnett is really old, and Ray Allen is hurt. Rondo was a one-man show, and it was spectacular, but it wasn't enough. It was almost enough, but it wasn't enough. But it was also on a night, and it wasn't enough, but a night that Wade did his usual, well, for the first half, I'm not going to even show up. And LeBron was good. His final stat line was the kind of stat line that most players in the league would kill for, but LeBron was average. For LeBron, what he did, he was absolutely average. So you have an average LeBron, a subpar Dwayne Wade for much of the game. Rondo went nuts, and they still couldn't win. I don't like the Celtics odds.
No, it doesn't look good for them at all. And if the Heat do go on to win this thing going away, do you see them being able to beat either the Spurs or the Thunder in a final?
I do, but only if, and this is reserved for the space between the ears of Dwayne Wade, really, and LeBron too a little bit. Only if those guys dial it up like they did late in that Pacers series where they just dominated those last 3 games. It was off the charts, and they did the same thing in Game 1 against the Celtics, and they really didn't in Game 2 and almost lost. And there's no understanding that because it's up to those guys. You're not going to stop them. If LeBron and Wade decide to attack the rim all game long, you just can't stop them. Physically they're superior. You're not going to stop them. Sometimes though they don't do it. Wade didn't do it for the first half of Game 2, and they paid for it almost. If those guys attack in tandem like they did against the Pacers, no one's beating them. But LeBron is the guy that disappeared in the fourth quarter last year in the NBA Finals, game after game after game, at the most crucial time of his career. He mailed it in. So there's no explaining what those guys will bring. But if they bring their best, no one's beating them.
Greg, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you coming on. We love to read your stuff on CBSSports.com, and I apologize if all the donuts are gone after we get through here. But I hope you get some.
Yeah, you had me looking the other way, and your producer came in and took my donut.
Hey, man, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the series and the rest of the summer. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Have a good one yourself.
You too. Greg Doyel from CBSSports.com on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.
This is a Sports Radio Live podcast covering your world of sports. Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live. It's weekdays at 3 on 99.3 Talk FM, the talk of East Texas.